Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everyone. Sorry we're a couple minutes late this morning. Working with technology. Things
Good.
weren't connected and things were not working. It doesn't let you know until right when you're ready to go live. So, okay, great. Good job, UI designers. You're the worst. I'm very frustrated with this app and how it does not make it easy for you to do things.
Has it reached the end of its life cycle, Mike? I feel like you go in waves with these things. Like you like them at first, and then is it the apps that just morph and change away from what works, or is it
You could get bored with it and just move on.
Yeah, you're bored with it.
No, I really, honestly, I really like this application that we use to stream with. We use Restream as our platform to stream out to simulcast multiple channels. I like it. It's been really good. They just did a major update in the last couple months, and I've been complaining about it for like the last month or so. Just how they changed the UI. My workflow or my pattern on what I was doing previously no longer works. I had to reinvent my pattern, and I think when you're trying to do things live and like you have your set pattern of things, it's hard to design a software for when you have hundreds, if not thousands, of people doing things slightly different in their own ways.
Sure.
And maybe I'm just misinformed. I mean, this is one of these situations. I find the same thing in Power BI with the filter pane. People have been happy just flipping along using slicers, eating up page space, and all of a sudden we show up with the filter pane. I'm like, use this. This is the only thing you should be using now because it's so much more powerful. And it is, but it takes time to learn it and like use it and figure out the best way to implement it on your reports. Anyways, all that being said, welcome to the podcast. Our main topic for today is going to be a mailbag. We're going to talk about the roles and identifying when people are leveling up. So kind of talking about what is a beginner, what is an intermediate person, and an advanced person, and maybe talking about the different levels. And this could be across any role, maybe in Fabric, architect, report developer, data engineer. What do we see are skills of those individuals at those different levels? With that, let's jump into some news. Tommy, you got any news for us?
Oh, we have some major news. Microsoft Fabric, the blog monthly update, that's probably 45 pages. I'm actually going to test this out.
It is absurdly long, which is good. That means a lot of things are happening.
So if I make a PDF out of this, we've got ourselves, hopefully I don't freeze my computer. So yeah, if you have not checked the Microsoft blog, we have over, oh my goodness, we have 65 pages of updates.
Nice. All right, well, let's go through all of them right now for news.
That's going to be our podcast.
Awesome.
So a few major ones, guys. I don't know if you saw things that caught your eye. Personally, Mike, I think they've heard you a little. There's some developer enhancements. There's some major notebook enhancements.
I like it. Yeah, that's the one I'm actually very interested in. So we've had these apps for a long period of time, and there's now a new object, I believe, called an org app. So you can have, I guess previously we would think about it, we'd have an app of a workspace that would have reports or things in it, and you would publish it from the workspace, and it'd be a mirrored copy of the workspace. Whatever, you have one app, one workspace, kind of how it was initially built. Well, now there's like an item called an org app, and now you can build an org app directly in the workspace. And what they just announced was they now said a notebook is now allowed to be available inside the org app, which I'm very excited about. I like a lot of the notebook experiences. When I do training now, I really enjoy writing Markdown and instructions and adding pictures and images and all. It can tell a whole story inside the context of a notebook. So the new feature for Notebook in an org app is very exciting to me. I'm looking forward to playing with that. I haven't had a chance to really dive into it, but I think this is really interesting and very rich. You can actually have visuals and things directly embedded in a scrollable page that is now just the org app with a notebook. I'm very excited about that. I'll put that in the chat window just for other people to kind of take a look at it. I think this is a really neat feature. And now with org apps, I believe you can also, I think this is the implementation of this as well, is you can make 4, 5, 6 org apps off of the same workspace. So we now can build different versions of an app, and then users can distribute them, and they show up just like an app in the app's location previously, which is kind of cool.
One of the cool things too is with the org app, there's 4 now kind of ways to view a notebook, which I'm really, really happy that they're doing.
Mm,
So
that's a good
there's this
point.
mode switcher.
Mode switcher
So,
now. Yeah.
yeah,
Feels a lot like when you're in edit mode or view mode in a Power BI report.
exactly. So this is pretty important. So there's that view mode, read-only access, just need to view it, edit for read and write. People can only run it, but they can't edit anything else. And then there's this develop mode. So you're right, Mike. They are trying to make as much as possible notebooks much more user-friendly and accessible.
Yeah.
One that some of these are, I think, just consolidating some of the pre-release notes we got, right? That we've talked about a little bit. One that catches my eye that I don't think we have that is new to this is the enhancements to the PBIR format.
Yeah.
So they've enhanced that now by adding the additional features where you can publish a PBIR report from a Power BI desktop, downloading a PBIX file using a PBR format from a workspace, and uploading a PBIX file using PBR format to a workspace.
That's pretty important. Download a PBIX file using the PBIR format from a workspace. I really like that one. And then publishing a PBIR directly from desktop, that's going to be important, I think. I think this is really closing the feature gaps on a lot of the PBIR. So for those of you who don't understand or don't know, the PBIR, Power BI report, is an ability for you to store all the report objects as single small JSON objects. It's actually way easier for you to go make edits or changes or manipulate the report because it's all a lot more human readable text, just written inside the format of the reporting inside the format of a folder for reports. I love this thing. Actually, this is what we use. We are using an older version, albeit, but we're looking at updating our theme generator. So our theme generator can also now build report pages and designs and all this extra stuff that you can do around the port side. Well, we use this PBIP format, and now the PBIR format is what we use to build out your templates inside our. We call it a theme generator, but it's actually kind of more than a theme generator. Now it's like a designer. So we should probably start changing the language of our report theme generator and now change over to calling it a designer.
Wow.
Anything else that stood out to you?
Few things with Power BI. There's this only like maybe 3 items that are just Power BI specific. There's this value filter behavior. I don't know if you saw this. So when you're filtering multiple columns on the same table, the current default value, the behavior takes the filters and combines into one. So considering only the combinations that exist, we've seen this before. So they basically have a few updates to this to actually show
in the decomp tree, is what you're saying?
In a table. So let's say you're filtering to a table, and to those fields, there's some combination. Before, some people, I've heard this little wonky, almost looks buggy because it would remove those combinations, but the count would be different. So now there's a new control basically to look at the value filter behavior and properties, whether or not you want to either have it automatic, independent, which forces the filters of the table to be kept separate, or they will result in combining them into one. So I honestly think that a lot of people have dealt with this bug with multiple filters on the same table. So I'm glad they're getting extra control over this.
You're talking about the modeling feature for value filter behavior. Is that what you're kind of describing?
Yep.
Yeah, that one's another one. Another one that I think was announced earlier, which I haven't had, again, I got to be honest, I haven't had a ton of time to play with it, but the info.view data analysis expressions in DAX, that's one that is very interesting to me as well. This is going to allow you to create documentation inside your model by creating a table. So you can evaluate info.view.tables and get all your tables and items back, which is kind of nice. So, and kind of a neat feature there as well. Anyways, I think those are all the main announcements. I think a lot of good stuff, a lot of little details here and there. I am excited for it.
Yeah, definitely worth a perusal of the top level features. It's always a long one to check whether or not
Oh man, there is so much.
there's some new stuff that helps you out.
Well, a whole bunch of things now more in preview. So we're expecting that preview list to get a lot longer. If you've heard us in the last couple episodes, we've been talking a lot about, or maybe teasing a bit about how many things are going into preview. It'd be nice if they could start moving some things out of preview and, letting us know the features are done. They're going to be supported long term. It would be great. But, we'll get there. I think this is growing pains, I believe. Everything is getting, stable. We're getting a lot of new feature improvements or what is it called? What's it called? Ease of life improvements. What do they call those? Quality of life. We're getting a lot of quality of life improvements of little things here and there that's good. All right. With that being said, I had to say one more update. Tommy, how's the baseball game going?
Oh man,
It officially ended last night. The Yankees actually had a giant lead. Aaron Judge finally hit a home run and broke out of his slump. But then in the last few innings, we gave it up. We didn't deserve to win. At least we won one game. We won on what day did we? We won on Tuesday, which was kind of nice. So at least we saw something, man. So
wasn't a sweep.
It was not a sweep. So
is this why you're hoarse a little bit today? Were you screaming a little bit loud at the TV?
I was screaming so much. A weird thing about stats, though, in the 120 years there's been baseball.
Yes.
If a team's been up 3-0, I think it's happened about 50 times. None of those games have gone to a game 6. So there's a lot of these very condensed stats where it is kind of funny where there is no hope for us. There's no hope for us. Just move on.
Just move on.
Yeah.
Well, Tommy, it was funny because I heard language you were talking about, this is going to change my marriage. This is this is a revolutionary. This has never happened before. It's still never happened. So to another year.
Never happened.
Still in the trough of despair, Tommy's got to continue trudging on and still loving his team. All right. Well, with that being said, let's get into our main topic today. So I believe this is a mailbag. Seth, do you mind kind of giving us a quick rundown or a quick read over this? I got to be honest. I was trying to trim down the text to fit it inside the description. So I might have actually trimmed it down a bit too much. So I apologize if I removed too many words from the actual description there.
That's why I copy and paste things out of.
Thank goodness. Sorry.
Mailbag. My name is Gabriel. Hey, Gabriel. Thank you for sending us your name so that we can know it.
Great question.
Address you, and a great question. I'm a consultant in data and analytics from up north in Canada. Up north, even north, more.
You get to read it like a Canadian now? Is that how this goes?
I don't know if I can do that. I really like your show. I'm just kidding.
Oh boy, canceled.
And Gabriel is now not going to listen anymore. I'm a listener almost from the start. You were doing a great job to explain concepts about people, process, and technology and keep us up to date with Microsoft Analytics ecosystem. My question for you is about people. What is your take on how do you identify the difference between junior, intermediate, and senior? Regardless of the role, architect, report developer, data engineer, what do you watch when it's time to promote someone vertically like this? On hard and soft skills? I'm curious, what do you think about this subject? Thanks to consider my question. Keep up the good work and best regards to all of you. Thank you for the question, Gabriel. It's a good one.
He could have said, best regards to all of you except Mike. Mike's not really saying much. Awesome. This is good. I like this question. This is going to be a thinker of a question. I think this is really interesting to kind of unpack the team of developers, or the team of people that you have around the Power BI ecosystem. Initial thoughts, Tommy. What are your kind of initial thoughts on
what I really like about this is I feel like we've gone through a ton when it comes to the skills matrix. We've gone through a ton when it comes to talking about certain roles, the data engineer, how things overlap. We've talked about leadership. We've talked about center of excellence. We've talked about initiative. But I really like this question because it's not just the skill that makes someone be able to identify if someone is ready to level up. And I think a lot of times we focus so much on more or less the skills matrix, almost like I said, like some other verticals, like I think it's logistics, where they actually have levels. Like, hey, I'm a level 12, logistics manager. The same thing in auto manufacturing. But with what we do, yeah, there are some obviously fundamental baseline skills that you need to be an expert on. There's a ton also that I don't want to say is extracurricular or like kind of not as necessary, but obviously with Power BI and Microsoft Fabric, you could go through the gamut of I'm going to be the best data flow person there is. That doesn't necessarily mean you're ready, but can help. So I really liked also talking about the soft skills here too. If I have a beginner, if I have someone who I've kind of been looking over, just came in, it's been a year and a half. What are they showing and demonstrating? And then I'm really interested to hear your guys' thought on that intermediate role, kind of like a lead data analyst, business analyst, and what their next, level up is and why.
Yeah. This will be interesting, I think, because talking about regardless of roles. So I think that the challenge for me here is you could, tell me what's an architect? What is a report developer? What's a data modeler, right? So I think in my mind, I have some of these roles. As I look at what things are being developed or created inside Fabric, I'm kind of sifting my mind over the kinds of people that we're going to interact with as we build things in Power BI, right? So there's going to be a number of people building just reports, not making a lot of models, right? There's going to be a number of people building only semantic models or enjoying the semantic model portion of this. And then we're going to have now with Fabric, I think we've added other roles like the data engineer and now data scientists also into this. So when I think about all of those different roles that we observe, I'm trying to think about like how do I quantify what I would say is a beginner versus intermediate and advanced. And when I do interviews, I do a lot of interviews with people, and one of the things I try to gauge them on, whatever the interview is, data engineering or Power BI or whatever, I like to start the conversation with here's the topics we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Databricks. We're going to talk about pipelines. We're going to talk about notebooks and Fabric. I give them kind of an outline of like, here's the main things I'm interested in understanding your knowledge. And then I give them a scale. I say, how good are you technically on this area? And can you say 1 to 5? And I promise I'm getting here somewhere at this point. Yeah. So the 1 to 5 scale is a 1 is I know about the feature, I've maybe read about it, but I have never really put my hands on keyboard and actually worked with the feature, right? So that's what I would consider a beginner at a technical level. On the 5 side, I use the advanced analogy of you're the one in your organization that is setting standards, setting the pattern, setting up others to win with whatever you've built, right? So you're able to evaluate and consider multiple options and say, for this situation, for our organization, we think the best way to build, let's call it like a Power BI app, right? The best way to build an app now is to now use an org app. And then inside the org apps, add your notebooks, right? So those are things that they're considering and weighing the value of, is this something that we can maintain? Is it something that's technically feasible? Are others coming to you to ask for help, right? So those kind of things. So that's kind of how I'm evaluating like the skills on the technical side. I think the soft skills are much harder to gauge, and I'd be actually curious your guys' opinion on how do you evaluate the soft skills, whether they're beginner or advanced.
Yeah, I think I'll spend a lot more time talking about soft skills. So I kind of want to lean into like talking about technical skill sets. I think is the easier part of this. Juniors, to me, and some of the comments are also aligning to this, right? It's more about showing aptitude of and a background of doing in the learning skills, right? Because you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to learn a lot.
Yeah,
and I'm trying to measure just how well they learn. How like, you're in this realm where you don't have a lot of experience, right? Business, you could come with a lot of schooling. That's great. It's not the same thing, right? Because you're not going to understand a lot of the things that you see out in the wild. You might skill out of junior into intermediate faster, right? If you've got that like theory and practice from schooling, which is great.
Yep.
But ultimately, like, you're getting spoon fed, right? Like projects, here are the specific requirements, here's the things you're looking for,
You're
here's,
talking like
you know,
as a school and a junior level, right?
I'm a junior level, yeah,
Yeah,
like
it makes
you're
sense. Yes.
like as a, because I almost feel this question comes from a manager perspective, like
Yes.
how do you bring people up or whatever the case may be. So
Mhm.
in skill sets, you're verifying work, you're, you know, having code reviews, people for sure reviewing things, making sure they're going out the right way, et cetera, right? Intermediate skill sets, right? I think you're proficient. You should be able to take the requirements, everything they're given in a project, you're asking questions and you can execute on it. But you're in that realm where like getting you're getting most of the information that's allowing you to go develop. Once you like to move from my realm into like from intermediate or just a developer to a senior, now you're moving into being more of a problem solver, right? You like
Mm.
from you're using your skill sets to come up with solutions instead of being told what the solutions are, and you're offering feedback or potential like directions that you can go and owning the project, right? And what I mean by that is like there's a lot of nuance of stuff that in any report, right? Any BI developer knows this. If it's internal, you get maybe 60 at best 60% of the information right up front if you're actually creating a story, right? Like or
Mhm.
following some pattern of like here's the project that we're working on. You've got to go track down a lot of information. Sometimes that's easy, sometimes it's a single owner, sometimes it's not. And as you're graduating through those things, I think that's where you get into the soft skills. But from a technical standpoint, you're also navigating some of the project things and transferring your technical knowledge to like business speak.
Yep.
I
I
like
like
that.
where you I like
Okay.
where you went with that, Tom. Sorry. Go ahead, Tommy. I just say I really like what you went with there, Seth, and I really agree with this. And I made some notes here. I'll come back to them. Tommy, I interrupted you. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Tommy.
I really like that because it's all the stuff I wish I knew when I was starting out.
Mhm.
I thought I could survive on being a nerd alone and a data savvy alone, but I always say that you wear like this job, you're really wearing multiple hats. The project manager, sometimes the communications and marketing director too, because you got to do promotions. Um, there's a lot of things you need to juggle, and a lot of that I look for, or if I were to kind of gauge myself starting off, it was the not just obviously the things that are basic to any job in terms of like, how do you document things, how do you keep on top of it, but I'm looking for the relationships more importantly, especially with that beginner. If I'm going to say, okay, this person is, really showing that they're ready to level up, it's the relationships that they've built and developed with the people who their stakeholders, probably the usual people that are asking for reports. Um, do Can they have a good conversation? Do those stakeholders, in a sense, rely on them, or when it comes to I need a new report or I need an update, I'm going to go to that person. And those are the type of things I want to see. And I want to see also that ability, really that communication. And it doesn't have to be you're the best discovery talker there is, and you can ask the best questions, but you have that empathy and you really have that ability to, regardless if it's something's broken, how do I use this? Where is that data? They can, in a sense, speak that data needs, that hybrid language between the data and the business.
I may venture this may not apply, and again, you guys correct me if I'm kind of wandering off. I'm internalizing what you're saying here, and I'm also trying to unpack it a little bit as far as how do I see this happening with. Again, I'm not going to talk specifically around the architect or report developer or data engineer. Just going to talk holistically here.
Sure.
Stepping back to this and saying, look, if I think about the junior level, if I bring on people, I'm reading a book now recommended by Matthew Roach. Scaling People is a book that I'm reading, and it's quite long. It's definitely, I'm gonna have a trip here pretty soon that I'm gonna coming up to, so I'm gonna put it in my ears. I'm gonna continue listening to it. So I'm kind of unpacking this book, and so as I think about scaling people, this was a Google executive who has, through many years, grown and developed teams in a small company as Google was at the very beginning stages, and continued growing these larger and larger teams, taking on responsibility, finding people that are going to win, enabling them, and giving them the skills to win. So that's kind of the lens of where I'm coming from here. If I think about that senior person. I'm going to throw out a couple skills that I think are there, and those are more of the softer skills. If I think about the senior, that senior person requires the least amount of direction. And so, like Seth, if you're like an organization, like a director, you're at the high level where you are, that senior person you're going to rely on. You're going to say, hey, we're having problems loading this data, or we need a solution to handle this. With minimal direction, they understand what the need is, can go get their own requirements. They are able to not come back to you, Seth, like, well, do you want it like this? Do you want it like that? You have a lot, there's not a lot of questions. And what happens is, and this is maybe what I think I like to see in a senior, is they come back to me and say, look, I've thought about your problem. I have 2 or 3 ways to solve this one. I'm going to recommend this way because it's most optimized on this, and this aspect. And I've tried this and these other 2, and it didn't seem to work as well for our company. So all 3 solutions may be a solution to work, but I'm picking the one and giving like reasonable, like, almost like I'm thinking like a lawyer when you like, verify your case or something like that. I'm coming in, I'm justifying the answer that I'm going to have with facts, backing it up with here's why we're going to build it this way. And then the outcome of that senior is whatever they've built, it works. Like it's going to work. They figure out the challenges, and you come back 6 months from now, a year from now, the thing that they put in place just humming along, not a problem. So I think those senior people are going to build some of those solutions that are just kind of rock solid to some degree. Like you can give them a task, they know how to do it. They thought about the edge cases of where things may fall off, when things may break, and then they walk away from the project. If it's a consultant, they leave. If they're on a different project, the old project they have doesn't become this massive tech debt of thing.
Yeah.
So I'll just pause right there. I have other points too, but that's just kind of one of my initial thoughts. Reactions?
Yeah, no, it's right on, right on with my thoughts as well, right? Like,
Okay.
where I think I have some additional points that maybe you do too within here is how do you get people there? Because
okay, that's my next point. Yes,
the largest, the way I simplify the great way you explained that is on any level, right? But especially from just an intermediate or developer level to senior level positions, are you making your boss's life easier?
Yes.
Or harder?
Yes.
And harder is, hey, I have a question. I don't know how to, right? And if you're going up to the boss as opposed to trying, like, even if you can't find the answer, right? You're putting a burden on your boss to go find that information for you, to gather the requirements, to do something for you, to complete something, right? So there's a burden there. Hey, I know you asked me to do this, but which way should I go? Well, now the burden is on the boss to figure it out, right? And in many cases, this is a known thing. It's not a bad thing. But Mike, to your point, when you get to if I'm going to promote somebody to a senior level, the conversations change, or the expectations I have for that conversation to change should, which is exactly what you outline. Hey,
yes.
Directionally, we've got a really big thing. This is a project, right?
Yes.
I can give them a summary, give them some guideposts of like, here's the direction we need to head. Here's the things we need to do. Let's have like a couple meetings, but they're in some cases just building out the stories as they need. They're like coming up with a few options and directions. And every time as we're doing checkpoints, it's exactly what you talked about. We can go this direction or this direction.
Yes.
This direction or this direction, right?
Yeah.
So it's
1 or 2.
And the huge
3
difference.
Or 4. It's like when you do your eye exam.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It always looks fuzzy. It doesn't matter what they do. It's always fuzzy, but for some reason.
The huge difference between that from a leadership perspective, right? On any level of somebody running a project, running whatever, is if you don't come with that, now it's the onus is on you being able to communicate everything you've gone through, or me diving into the details so that I can make an informed decision, because you're not summarizing that for me.
Yes.
Right.
Agree.
So that just want to 100% agree. And I think there are other softer skills underneath there, obviously being able to communicate, right? Really well.
Okay. That's another point I had there. You're touching on another point.
Intermediate level, like, can you read your own code in business speak?
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Have you notated it that way? Are you doing a lot of things, right? Like, but base level, intermediate, like people should be covering all the base level expectations of a team, right? That means
Yes.
whatever you've set up from, documentation or notes in code or
Mhm.
code reviews or where stuff is supposed to be saved and belongs, et cetera, et cetera. Like that is so part of it's not even a question of whether or not you're doing it. It's just there and done, right? So you're building those levels of like operating as a great team member and learning new skills to grow to the next point. But I think in large part, the big shift between that, like just developer or engineer to a senior level is you're leveling up on the value you're bringing to the team and the organization.
I like your point here a lot, and I'm gonna add one more thing here. My kids have been going through some, I guess it's called like Strength Finders. I think is what the
Yeah.
the book is called. So Strength
Mhm.
Finders, kind of figuring out what kind of personality you are. Like, do you need a lot of friends? Are you an influencer, or are you going to be more of like, I have less friends, but I have really deep, meaning relationship with a couple of friends? And I think this is some of these soft skills. I'm not sure if this. I think people can dial certain skills of themselves up or down depending on their needs.
Yep.
And so, when I'm in a work setting, I'm probably a bit more aggressive with my words, a bit more like stronger with my language around solutions and things that I'm developing because I'm trying to convey strength and like I understand this, I know what's going on. But I think to some degree, those and if I talk about like junior and intermediate levels, you need a person that's going to have some level of what I'm going to call woo, the ability to convince people that your solution is the right one. The ability, and I think Seth, this goes very well along with your good communicator, right? I'm expecting those senior people to be able to take complex ideas, complex solutions, and distill them down into simple architecture diagrams, simple communicated projects, right? Being able to and kind of like not woo people, like that's not a bad thing. It's like they have the ability to like engage and have empathy for the person needing the work done. They understand what's going on. They can articulate, and it's a lot of this. I think there's a part of this. It's around being good communicators. Like, hey, I heard you say, and then restating the problem in a different way that you understand it. Does that make sense? Am I understanding your problem correctly? And then I would say the intermediate and soft skill and the junior people they're just some version less of that, right? Maybe they're not doing that. They need those skills. They don't do it all the time. They're only doing it some of the time. So I think there's some level of like woo that needs to be held at that senior level.
I
The
don't. I
last,
don't.
oh,
I
go ahead.
don't like let's land on
Sorry.
communication for a second here. Like
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't disagree with you, but I think I would separate it out um in that is more job dependent, right? And the reason I say that is
Okay. What do you
um
mean?
directionally there are a lot of even in technical realms, like
Mm-hmm.
I still think about directions that people would want to head. Do you want to be a manager leader? Do you want to engage more with the business, or are you more the technical leader? And
Hmm.
communication is still extremely important, but the skill sets that you need to, like the technical side is going to be the easier side. Can you
Sure.
summarize a lot of complex things? Can you like simplify it? We're talking about diagrams, and then can you get down into the weeds, right? Like absolutely communication is important in there, especially as you're articulating ideas. I think what you describe is almost like where I would say you're leveling up. You really, if you don't have those skills innately, like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of soft skill work you need to do to ensure that you're communicating across the boundaries of very technical things to business audiences that do not have technical understanding or understanding where they're at, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and and presentations, right? Like, hey, we're presenting whole big projects or scope for like, the quarter, the year, whatever. Like leveling up those skills, I think is much more important as you start to have to be part of, the cycle of more of the business side of things. And to me, the levels of communication would differ from those senior levels, because there are certainly opportunities, I would say, a technical leader like an architect could have that they're presenting to a big wide audience, but that opportunity is not going to be around very often, as opposed to someone who's going like leveling up into senior and management level, where that's a regular part of the the daily life is communicating workloads and projects and timelines and all those things.
Oh man, you're touching on so many good points. Tommy, I don't want to stop because I have another point around what Seth just said. But
you continue that because I have a question.
Okay, I've been writing down tons of things here, so I'm sorry. I'm just trying to like really unpack a lot of these things. I liked your comment, Seth, around the project timeline. I think there's also the skill at the senior level that is, you can listen to a problem, and you know enough of the Fabric technical side where you can project a solution. So someone says, "Hey, we need real time." Right. Okay. Well, what does that mean? Give me some more requirements. Like, what does that look like? And then that senior person is then asking a lot of questions, listening to the feedback, and then saying, okay, based on what you said, here are some solutions that we're doing that are possible, and then just being clear about it. Right. I think we could use the real-time analytics of Microsoft Fabric. We could stream events in over here. We could do this. They know enough to be able to say with confidence, here's a solution that I can project. But they're also able to clearly articulate, like, look, we've never done this before. I would need some extra time. You give yourself a little bit of padding to like appropriately estimate out the project. And another, I think, characteristic of a senior person would be they can deliver a project on time with their estimates. So you come to them and you estimate how long will it take you to ingest these, 1,000 tables. That user is able to say, well, in past experience or other things, that senior person is going to take other data points and be able to come up with a rough estimate. But when they do the project, they're either getting it done on time or under time, or when there is issues. And I think in every data project I've ever been in, there's never been an easy project because there's always that layer of unknown unknowns, right? So there's always things that are going to come up that are just going to be problems. And so I think having someone who can see or have the forethought and the knowledge ahead to say, look, they're giving good time estimates. They're able to get projects done in a reasonable amount of time. And when issues come up, because they will come up, they're clearly communicating, this has been a problem, this is causing a delay. And that way there's no surprises on the other side. I think it's a characteristic I would look for in a senior, because a lot of people can be okay with extensions in timelines if they know there's real issues that we didn't know about. Like, we came in, we assumed this, the data came in totally wrong. We were told it was good.
Right.
We need to fix it. So what do we do? Like, let's take a decision point at this point in the road. This is going to impact our timelines. Here's some, again, back to our options earlier, which is, here's some solutions we should think about. Let's think about this or this. This is what I recommend. Okay, leadership, now it's your time to say, are we going to eat the tech debt now? Or are we going to just push it off and just get it done and work on it later? So I think that, to me, is I don't see juniors doing that kind of stuff. And I see sometimes intermediates doing those level of projections. But I find that intermediate and juniors are very uncomfortable with giving timelines and, project deadlines and be able to commit to getting something accomplished. Because it just feels like that's just not that's a senior's role kind of thing a bit more.
Yeah, you definitely need like the elevation from I'm just estimating a work task or a story or a thing to I'm estimating or all the things, or giving bringing it a higher level. What's the t-shirt size, right? Like, how, like,
this
are
is
we going to be
hard.
100% on? No, but there's a calculation by which you do that, right? So it's like, hey, I think it's going to take X amount of time. We add some buffer. We do these things.
Yes.
Here's the Gantt chart, right? Here's the project timeline from what we know right now, clearly defining those things. And I think you really nail another part, Mike, that I would look for that is solid already in like a developer or intermediate stage, is how transparent are those individuals with problems.
Yeah.
Right. To your point, I think you graduate the more you're in business to understanding that, like, and you graduate only when you've either failed horribly, meaning like there was a project timeline and you missed it, right? A big impact of like you were part of or around and close enough to recognize that are there impacts to businesses with missing timelines? 100%. Oh, yes. Right? Sometimes they're bigger than others. So does it mean that there aren't ramifications to the miss? No, there are a lot of the times significant. But what does the business do? It automatically pivots, right? Like, okay, we are positioned with like a situation we did not expect. How do we resolve that? How do we reset? What are the timelines, et cetera? And the reason that is such a big deal for organizations, right, or at any level, is um, that you didn't give them time to react and plan to
Yes.
absorb the change, right?
Yes.
And what you highlighted there is like, hey, something went awry in this project. Here's the specifics. So here's what we're observing. Here's the specifics of the problem. Here's where I think we can go. But this is the impact. Then that automatically gets communicated. Then you can smooth things out, or it's not as a big deal for your team or for your organization because somebody brought it up right away. And I think that's a culture thing, one, but two, it's also like a culture meaning like people have to feel confident that they can bring that stuff forward, instead of just being like, yeah, we're going to power through and maybe we hit the date or maybe we don't. But it also shows that they're invested in the success of the project and they're like, whoa, right? Like we have to talk about something because
Yes.
we're misaligned right now. And
Yes.
and that is a huge differentiator, I think, between someone who's been in the business or in their position for a while that elevates them to that senior position. Because once again, we're giving you a title, or you should be promoting to a title that is adding more value to the team and to the business. And that's part of that value, I think.
And so many things you're hitting on. Okay. Sorry, Tommy. We've been talking back and forth, Seth and I, a lot here. Is there anything you want to jump in? Because I do have another point, but I want you to go and make sure you get some.
I really want to ask this because I'm loving the conversation. But what about the actual gauge? Right? There's really no way to measure this like those skills, some of those soft skills. Like, hey, how are they doing with like unless you're doing like surveys and forms, or you're sitting down with them with calls with the business, right?
Yep.
So, and then you don't want just one or two like off chance. So what's that kind of way to accurately and we'll say fairly gauge? Yeah, in a sense, quantify, gauge.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
you're on the perfect, right.
I just do it based on how I feel. So that's kind of how
completely arbitrary.
It's perfect.
I think really arbitrary. I just pick numbers out of thin air and just apply them.
This is the one point that I really like. I highlighted is wanting to make that actually points back up at Gabriel or the manager, right? You're not going to know this unless you're looking for opportunities for people who are performing very well in that intermediate stage, and they have the skill sets or the drive or the want to get to a senior level. You have to look for opportunities for them to handle those situations, right? So
Very
there's
true.
two things. One is you should clear, like, and I'm almost getting into my closing statement, but it's like you should absolutely have your own clear expectations for a role. And a lot of the things we've talked about, while some of them are soft skills or performance type things, you can summarize that in a statement, right? Clear and transparent communication, right? About projects and timeline, whatever the case may be, right? That could be one of the expectations we have of a senior person. But where leveling up gets very interesting sometimes. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. Where in order for you to understand whether or not somebody could take a next step, you have to ride a little bit of risk with some projects, right? Because there could be a big one, and you're not going to know if they can perform unless you give them the opportunity. And hopefully, sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't.
I'm gonna take a couple more items. A friend of mine I've been talking about and unpacking leadership, and I think this is an interesting phrase that I'm using a lot in my journey as a business owner and working through companies and building things here. I'm gonna throw this phrase out here and see what you guys think. The phrase is, and I don't know where this came from. He just told me it. I don't know. Someone may have quoted this one. Again, I'm not taking credit for this. I've been listening to it and listening and trying to think on the concept here. Walk as far as you can see, and when you get there, you can see further, is the phrase. All right. So this is kind of like a riddle maybe at some point, right? The skills that took me, so I can only see so far. I can only see up to the horizon, right? So I can look at that horizon and walk all the way to the horizon. But when you get there, there's a whole new set of challenges in front of you that is just different than where you came from.
Okay.
And so I think the principle here is the skills that brought you from where you were to where you are right now. That has been a journey. There's been skills that brought you to that position. However, the next part of your journey, the seeing further portion, that is another area of new skills, and the skills you had are not necessarily the skills you need to go to the next mile, the next horizon. And as a business owner, I'm finding a lot of this, especially as I'm scaling my team. Me internally have to grow a lot. Initially, I was doing all the work. I was the developer, I was the builder, I was the communicator, I was the sales guy, everything I did. Well, the skills I had were around me doing everything.
Yeah.
I've had to now grow and learn and read and try to, what kind of leader do I want to become as I bring on a team of people around me to accomplish things for my customers or accomplish the things for my company internally? What do I want the culture of my team to look like? And so one of the things that we're talking about here is, moving, identifying what people are in junior, intermediate, and senior levels. But Seth, I think you hit a great point here is we can't just assume people are just going to naturally move their way up through these pieces, these different levels. I think we need to be intentional about our organization and figure out where is, what should we be doing? How should we be investing in our team? To assume that your team will just naturally get better on these things, that's not a good assumption. Everything runs to entropy. It all goes to chaos, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, we have to be intentional and invest in people. And especially if you're talking about leaders of other people on your team, they need the skills to be, you got to train them, spend the time, invest in them, that, hey, look, you're going to become a leader. You're doing better things. Here are, to your point, Seth, here are some really hard projects. And you have to lay out kind of the expectation up front. Look, this is new for you. I need you to start taking more ownership on these things. Here's what I'd like to see. I'd like you to see you give an estimate. We're going to kind of, this is one of many projects you may be working on. But as you do this, one of the things we're going to be looking for or trying to develop skills around is be clear about it. I mean, I think one of the things I couldn't stand when I had a manager who wouldn't give me what is the bar I'm trying to jump over, or the bar kept moving.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was so confused. And I was like, well, I think I'm trying as hard as I can to get to that bar. But then, I feel like, hey, I made it to the bar. I'm at the finish line, and the finish line moves 30 feet further. I'm like, oh, dang it. I got to keep running.
Yeah.
So people who move that decision or the goal or the end thing, yeah, there's going to have to be some grace in here. No one's going to ever dial it in and get it 100% perfect all the time. I get that. But just having some of the expectation management, and I think even having this kind of conversation of like, what is junior, what is intermediate, what is senior, and just outlining some of the characteristics, the properties that your company or you as a manager values, I think already starts aligning the team and expectations. I was talking with a recent Microsoft PM, and they said, I think it was every other week, twice a month, they sit down and they have a data culture conversation. So part of their stand-up, their team conversation is they regularly revisit the data culture or the culture, their team culture.
Team culture, yeah.
What does that mean? What behaviors do we want to incentivize? Rewarding people who are doing those behaviors, communicating. I think that's so healthy for a team because everyone now knows the expectations of what's going on.
Right. I couldn't agree with more with a lot of what you said. Having that bar, clear expectations, right? If I don't have an expectation of what a senior is, how am I going to be able to articulate that to somebody?
Correct.
Right. And the other thing is, like, at points in time as you're developing people in teams, right? Sometimes the best you can do is just make sure that people are growing, because that's going to help them more in their career.
Mm-hmm.
Could there be like roadblocks as far as like actual promotion or budget or whatever? Yes, but at the same time, in your mind, or how that individual is helping with the value that they're bringing, if they're elevating into senior levels, then when those opportunities arise, you seize them without any question, right?
Yes.
I really like I like that phrase, right? Because what it is saying is all of us on some level should be moving forward, and managers should be helping their people move forward in the paths that are gonna be more beneficial to them.
Mm-hmm.
As a manager, right? One of like the best teams, and I look at like the groups of people that I've worked with individually in the past, but the best teams are the teams that are carrying the burden for the managers and the leaders and solving those problems so that the attention of the manager or the leader is one of future forward mostly, right? Where you're strategizing, you're setting up the next big steps for the team to make even bigger value outcomes for the
Yes.
business, right?
Yes.
It's I would argue probably like it's the worst scenario where leaders or managers are the ones doing the grunt work all the time.
Yes.
Because one of two things hasn't happened. You're not
Yes.
cultivating your people, right? You're
Yes.
not upskilling them, or you don't have the person that is taking on that senior, more senior role.
Yes.
And then you got to find them, right? And what's great is some people come in with the skill sets and the drive and like just will rip through all of these levels, and I think that should be recognized as well. And other ones are not going to go that fast, and it takes work, and you can level them up. But in many cases, I think it's these other ancillary outside of just the skill, like the technical skills, that are the like what we're talking about most. It's the technical skill is an assumption, right? If you're a senior, we expect that your technical skills are spot on, right? You've seen a lot of things. You are coming up with solutions. It's the byproduct of a lot of those outcomes and that work, though, that start to generate different opportunities and paths for people. And like if you want to slap a senior like thing on that, that's how you elevate yourself in a team or an organization, is where you capture a lot of the thoughts that we've talked about related to the value that you're bringing to the team with minimal or lower inputs from top down, right? You're almost driving the initiatives a lot of the time. And oh my, what a world where all a leader has to say is like, here's our top level objectives, like come up with the plan and let me know next week. Right. Sweet.
Yeah.
Go do it. Go get it done. Right.
Making things happen.
Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. Super good topics here. I think we're just about at time here, so we'll kind of get a wrap going here. So I think I am really excited to see where we go with this. Fabric is awesome. This discussion has been incredibly valuable to me. I think this is this kind of stuff we need to unpack. This is the stuff that doesn't come out of the technology. This is all the soft skills, the people skills. And I think my final thoughts here is walk as far as you can see, and when you get there, you'll see further. That's going to be my final thought. And Tom, any final thoughts for you?
No, I think this is something that hopefully wherever you're at, beginner, intermediate, or trying to get to the next step, hopefully you have a good boss, a good culture, but have the conversation with your boss and be proactive too, because a lot of times your boss will be more than happy to tell you where you are falling short. So if you do want to level up, talk to those people who are responsible for that, who work with you, and go, what do I need to do? What do I need to work on? So,
yeah,
awesome.
And two real quick last points just to Gabriel, right? Where the question comes in, the feedback would be, have clear delineations of like what those roles are, because it also gives the bar for the individual to like leap towards, like Mike was talking about. And then one thing that I didn't talk, that if there's question of how you do that, what I've also found very successful in just measuring like where a person is at is using it's called a 9 box. Go look at that. It looks at like kind of potential and performance, and read up on that, because it's very I think telling of how do you gauge where people are at in teams and where you want to take them from a skills perspective.
I like it. With that being said, we appreciate you all on the podcast. We know this is an hour of your time that you're never going to get back. Hopefully this was a more valuable time than you scrolling through YouTube and other videos, like, watching those cat videos that you love or whatever else you're doing. Or hopefully we are here and helping you complete your exercise. So good job. You're keeping up the good work. Finish strong, and you can be a better leader tomorrow because you've seen where you've been. All the philosophical thoughts. But with that being said, the only thing we do on the podcast, we don't advertise this. If you like what you hear here and you want to have other people continue learning about this stuff as well, we'd love to have more people to our community. Please share this with somebody else. If you don't mind, hit the bell or subscribe down below and the YouTube channel. or all the other social media platforms. It lets the algorithm know you like this. This is good stuff. So that being said, Tommy, where else can you find this podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. If you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tip/podcast, leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of powerbi.tips social media channels.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.